I'm really curious to know if there are any early conclusions or early realizations about how writing needs to change to optimize for the evals. For example, do I not need to worry about my sidebar structure and how I'm organizing files? Is it all just one big soup? And do I need to just load in a bunch of detail that normally I might say, that's a little too much? Like how is it changing how we write?
Yeah. So I'm an information architecture person, like to my dying days. So I think so if you're looking at, the structure of a doc site, and you said sidebar, and I'm thinking of like the nav, right? Like where is stuff and like how are we categorizing stuff in them and the taxonomies and pretty abstracted things and getting down into the details. I was like, okay, how are we like listing our overviews and our responses and the specs and like all the user guides and things. So the whole pipeline of information architecture, I think is still really important. Even if you're going to take your doc site and flatten it out and feed it into an LLM, there's a hierarchy there that can be understood, and a prioritization of like this is how we organize information. This is where it is. If you're looking for overviews, like they're all going to be in this one spot. If you're looking for errors, they're all going to be in this one spot, and user guides, etc. So I think like thinking about the organization of the which is the knowledge base, right? It's going to go into the resources, is going to become the knowledge base. Is still like critically important. I think if you throw in this like into the soup, it goes like I have thought about this. I'm like, well, do we need like this dev portal to still function in this way, or can we just like throw everything in there and I mean they'll figure it out. And I think that probably the listeners here have tried something like that and realized, wow, the agent they're not good at this. So the clearer we can be and precise we can be as far as like how information is organized and feeding that as a resource, like in this case, the MCP server, the better we can do that, I think the better that we equip
Mm.
the server and the tools to do what they need to do. It's so important.
That's reassuring,
I'd like to think so.
right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think anytime you're feeding tons and tons of information to an LLM and expecting any good writing to come out of it, it can't handle right huge chunks of information like that. It's going to do well with the beginning and the end, and the stuff in the middle is just going to be effectively like soup. So
Yeah.
the best way you can modularize your documentation, like modular documentation, still really important. Organizing it, still really important. Thinking semantically about how that stuff is organized, still really important. And that feeds directly into the tooling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels to me I've been playing a bit with MCP servers lately. I built one, very simple one,
Mhm.
to call a tool to check the style of the docs. And my impression, and Andy, I don't know if it's also your sensation, but I think this is one very promising direction of documentation tooling, in the sense that
Mhm.
it's mixing the best of both worlds. Like the on one hand, you have the deterministic aspect of, say, like defining a tool call, defining an API
Mhm.
endpoint, or maybe you have a tool just to feed that information architecture or that taxonomy to the LLM in a more structured way.
Mhm.
And then on the other hand, you have the enormous but also non-deterministic capabilities of the LLM. But it's a way for me of taming a bit the LLM to have
Right.
something more structured, that layer
Yes.
of the MCP server, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I think, and just to note that the MCP server that you kind of wrote about recently, I've already saved it. Like we're going to talk about it as a team. Like, can we do this? So we wanted to have some additional checks on our work, and like this is fantastic. And so what I've mostly been going on about here is how as a writer you're working on MCP servers and tools as a product, but then there's the flip side, what you've written about, which is cool. And I'm like, I'm literally looking at this every day and wasn't thinking about how can I create an MCP server to better the docs themselves,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I was like, that's really fun. So yeah, I think that you have this great opportunity with good writing and good planning and good organization to reduce that non-deterministic part
mm,
of the LLM agent
right.
experience when you're trying to do that. And for docs, it is critical. Right. So if you're using any agent in part of that process, you cannot have it, you you cannot veer from like the expected outcome like every time you're calling it. So anything that you can do there, and that's why um, following best practices for the tool descriptions and schemas and outputs and things like that is really critical.